What's up, guys? Vince Dow here with some bonus content. I know we don't normally do stuff like this, but very recently I sat down with the CEO of NobleGold. As you guys know, NobleGold is a company that sponsors and supports the channel, which on that front, be sure to check the link in the description, vincedaogold.com, to protect your retirement with their gold IRAs. But anyway, I recently sat down with the CEO of NobleGold, who is obviously a very experienced and successful businessman, to kind of discuss sort of advice for young men out there, and especially and young women as well, because there's a lot of questions that I have. There's a lot of questions I'm sure a lot of you guys have in terms of, where should I take life? A lot of people say go to college. That's what the system says. A lot of people in the conservative space say don't go to college. What should I do on that front? If I want to start a business, how do I do that? How do I kind of identify the ways to build wealth? All of that stuff. I think these are a lot of things that are not taught in school, and a lot of things that, our followers and stuff have questions about. I mean, I see sometimes super chats about it every here and then. So this is our conversation with the CEO of NobleGold. And again, we kind of discussed two main topics here. Should you go to college? And then if you want to start a business, build wealth, how do you do those things? Very good conversation. Here it is. All right, folks. Well, today I have the great honor of being joined by the CEO of NobleGold, Collin Plume. Collin, thank you for coming on, and it's great to have you here on the channel.
Thanks. Excited to be here today.
Absolutely. So, Collin, I guess let's start, because we've talked about this a little bit in private, but there's this very interesting question of whether or not young conservative guys should go to college. Recently on my show, I've been complaining about it quite a bit because I feel like what I'm doing currently in college is kind of useless and a waste of time, whatever. But I have a little bit more of a nuanced take on this because I'm not totally of the opinion that everyone just go to trade school or start your own business, because I do think there are legitimate purposes for certain people to go to college, obviously, if you want to be a doctor, engineer. But then I would also say if someone wants to truly do something with law or infiltrate academia, in one of those ways. But I also feel just in terms of the general population, just normal people, I think too many people are going to college. It's a waste of time. I'm in a business degree right now, and I'm not finding it to be the most useful thing. So I guess what's kind of your take on that issue?
Well, we're starting out on a hard-hitting question. I hope I don't get in trouble with some of the universities out there and professors. I hope I don't get a lot of backlash for this, but I don't think for most people today, college helps them in any way. I don't think, the idea of that, especially the 4-year degree, if you don't have access, if let's say you're coming out with a loan, you're going to be anywhere from, let's say conservatively $150,000 to $200,000 in debt for a 4-year degree. How much more are you going to make? What skills are you going to learn to make that money back? And, I look at it just what's happening in terms of jobs today. And you look at, for instance, what you do on YouTube. Last year, there was 321,000 people that were on social media, that are building careers on social media, that have made over six figures, that made over $100,000 a year. So when you look at that and the ability to make 100,000 plus, as opposed to, let's say, a standard job out of the gate for college after a 4-year, maybe you're making anywhere from 50 to 60,000. Plus you're struggling with that, debt that you have to carry through. I don't think the premise of it is as strong today as it was 30 or 40 years ago, because I don't think that 150,000 in debt is going to get you to that next level. What you're doing in terms of business, yeah, you're learning about business in school, but there's no way what they're teaching in school can keep up with what you're doing right now today, right? You had to learn how to look at analytics. You built a channel, you have a voice, you're cutting it, you're editing it, you have the equipment. So for you, and I don't know what your setup costs, but let's say it costs $5,000. Your $5,000 setup will be bringing in minimum six figures with soon, if not already. So with a $5,000 investment, that's a tax write-off, you can be hitting six figures. or you could be $150,000 in debt to make 50,000. I don't see how the math works.
And it is an interesting point you bring up. It's kind of the idea that the education itself is in a way outdated. And I think of two things. I think of, first of all, especially in regards to a business degree. I mean, in a way, what are you essentially doing? You are learning how to run a business or to, do stuff in the business world from people who have never done it, right? In a lot of other fields, a lot of times professors will do whatever that is, practice medicine, blah, blah, blah for many years, and then come back in as esteemed professors of their field. But in the business world, you never see Jeff Bezos or any of these people who actually did it and were successful at it come back to be, business professors. So there's that. But then I guess my other question here, in terms of the outdated aspect of it, is how much of these business degrees do you think are actually going to be outdated in the next few years? Because I look at something like ChatGPT, right? And I played around with it a little bit myself to see kind of what it's all about. And I look at it, I'm like, the entire world, at least for copywriting, right, which is an entire sphere of like marketing, everyone in that field sector, besides maybe one person to type in a ChatGPT, is going to lose their job. I see how that's going. And I'm sure that's the case with a lot of other, maybe more complicated aspects of business too. So do you get the feeling that maybe a lot of these degrees are not able to keep up with the way technology is going to change the entire business world?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, and I also think even more so, there's degrees in things that are more practical that nobody wants to do. So communications, huge degree, right? Mm-hmm. Marketing, big, there's some of these that are kind of catch-alls that a lot of people go into, but there's smaller things that, my wife, before she stopped working because, we have kids and it just got too busy at our house. She was in the insurance business. She went to college for political science, great college, and ended up in the insurance business and had a phenomenal career in insurance. And for many years was the breadwinner of our family. And I think that when you look at, that career, that's a steady brick and mortar career that a lot of people don't talk about. And it's not even really much of an option. Now, some colleges offer some degrees in that, but it's very small. We have these very broad degrees, as you mentioned, and I think a lot of them will continue to become outdated. Now, in terms of writing and content, I know there's this big push for, where content's going. And I think you can make an argument that general information you'll be able to get from ChatGPT, and I think it'll sway more. But writing in general, I still think there's a human component in persuasion, in voice that will be around. But that even said, you're probably not going to learn that in college either, right? Mm-hmm. What you're gonna do is you're gonna go out on a writer and you're gonna try to get a job, and then the person that wants the content, let's say if someone like me, let's say someone's a writer for us, they need to learn about precious metals. They need to learn about finance. They need to learn about fiat money. They need to learn about the bank. So they can have a general writing style, but they need to be hands-on in what we're doing. And that's the experience that's actually going to help them more than just the degree of learning how to write. Yeah, you have the fundamentals there, but if they can't grasp subjects specifically in day-to-day, it's not going to help them. So yeah, I do think a lot of it has to do with some of these careers going away. And I'll tell you, someone that was a close family friend of mine was this guy who started Kinko's. I can't remember his first name. His last name's Orfala. Sold it for a few $100 million, Kinko's. And he started Kinko's at University of Santa Barbara. And in essence, what he started doing, he realized there was nowhere to get copies made. And he started making copies out of his garage at UCSB. And he did that. And then I don't even think he finished college at that point. The business started to take off. And he just really blew up that business. And speaking of, professors, they actually did have him come back and teach a class, but he thought sort of college was sort of useless, and he ended up just giving everyone A's in the class. And this is a true story.
Great guy.
So he didn't last very long as a professor at UCSB. But the thing that he told me that was interesting is that in terms of grades, he said he was a C student, D+ student, and he said that the C and D+ students, especially in Santa Barbara, they were looking for something else. And he said, as a business owner, the C+ students, the D plus students, end up hiring the A plus students to work underneath them to handle their finance, to handle. So he told me, this is like his quote, is that I end up employing all the head of the class, but I was middle or below in class. And it was because he was an entrepreneur and had a mind for it, and he saw an opportunity there and took it and created this business with Kinko's, and I think they got bought out by FedEx, and then he ended up starting a bunch of other businesses. But that mindset of not filling into the college paradigm and having that college mind really kind of helped him build a significant wealth. And it's something that's always, stuck in my mind to this day.
So to young guys out there watching, I mean, obviously you are a successful entrepreneur, you have the NobleGold business, but let's say you were 18, right? And so you were starting over tomorrow, you're 18, you have probably not any specific skills, but let's just say a general mind for entrepreneurship, a general sense maybe of creativity and a willingness to work hard. And you kind of have to plot out your life path. What would you do if you had to start at 18 years old, kind of in today's economy, from a successful businessman?
There's two ways to build wealth, in my opinion, in that 18-year-old scenario. The first way would be marry into it. No, I'm just kidding. The first way to do it would be to learn how to sell. Sales, by far, you have a much higher room, much higher ceiling, sometimes no ceiling. At 18, if you have a connection to it, or you think you have a good way of speaking, or you have any excitement about it, learning how to sell will help you in so many different areas. So that would be the first way I would do it. The second way,
that's very interesting, because you're not the only successful business person I've heard say that. I've heard that advice a lot, actually. Like, the best first job to take is a sales job, but continue.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Every
engine of every company is sales. So if you are a salesperson and you have the ability to do it, and I think, a lot of people, it's so funny, so many times the greatest salespeople, some of the greatest salespeople I know, never thought of themselves as salespeople, but then you would talk to them and they would sell you on a restaurant, or they'd sell you on a hat, or they'd sell you on a vacation. They could sell you everything else, but for whatever reason in their mind, selling a product was something different. And it isn't, right? It's just, you have to find a product that you believe in. And don't get me wrong, like, at some points over your sales career, you may sell a product you don't love. But I think learning to find that product that you love and then matching it with your excitement over that product will really catapult you early on. And the earlier you get past that fear, and even if nowadays, I mean, if you talk even lawyers today who you wouldn't think, or accountants or any of them, a big part of their job, even if they're at some of the big firms, is acquiring business. Mm-hmm. And so these people that went to school to be a lawyer now realize when they get to a certain level, it's not even them doing anything in terms of law. A lot of them have people below them that are doing a lot of the menial tasks or the general work. A lot of it is just generating business, which at the end of the day, what is that? That's sales. So someone could go through all this schooling, get a law degree, get to the end, work those first 5-6 years, and then realize that having the ability to sell, or having a good personality, or having a way to network is equally, if not more valuable than the actual degree. So that would be the first step that I would take for an 18-year-old is realizing that is a big part of what your future is going to hold if you want to be highly successful. The next step is you want to get into an area where you're around a lot of very wealthy people. I was very lucky at an early age that my father was an entrepreneur. My grandfather was not. So I was around a lot of independent thinkers, but I wasn't around a lot of super wealthy people. It wasn't until I got into commercial real estate and I was selling shopping centers and apartment buildings that I was really around every day. From when I woke up to the end of the day, I was around some of the smartest, shrewdest, hardest working people. All the people that I was talking to on a day-to-day basis, most of them were immigrants into this country. Most of them came here with nothing. And a lot of them built businesses and then transitioned into, real estate for their fortunes. But they were so savvy, so frugal, and just independent thinkers. They really understood the value of thinking independently about money and how money works. And I think getting close to those people in my life and seeing them and interacting with them, people that I would routinely talk to, people that had 50 or 100, or I even talked to one guy that had $200 million in a bank account back in the day, which I hope he still doesn't have it in a bank account. He'll be very disappointed with those returns. But I would talk to them routinely, and you get to insight into how they're thinking. And what it does, Vincent, as you know this, it changes you. It changes how you're thinking. It changes your day-to-day, changes your mentality. It makes you less afraid, right? Because, if these people can do it, you can do it. So I think sales would be the first thing. And I think being around really smart, really shrewd people day to day, even if you're not making a lot of money, even if you end up working for a business owner and you go, I'll work for you for free, especially at 18, you got nothing to lose. I'll work for you for free. Let me work for you for 6 months for free. Let me learn how you do in day to day. And I think people will respect that. And I think that mindset and that will take you really far in the world. And it's similar to my path. I've been selling pretty much since I was actually started much earlier than that. I started at like 12 or 13-year-olds selling different items. But I built a very strong sales path through my career, worked in a number of different industries, and then was very lucky to fall into precious metals almost 14 years ago and found sort of my calling. But it took a lot of ups and downs and selling a lot of products and working a lot of industries before I figured out kind of what was best for me.
Yeah. And, as like they always say, or I don't know if they always say this, and maybe I'm just making this up, but it's like network, net worth. Those words sound similar. There must be a connection there. No, but so it is very true, right? And there's something about being around entrepreneurs and even just listening to them talk that like it'll literally change your brain, especially if you are someone who just wasn't born thinking like that. So it is absolutely true. So let's say you spend a few years, you get experience in sales and, hopefully you kind of build this network of wealthy people. They're not just necessarily investors, but also mentors. They've kind of taught you how to think, how to attack the process. Let's say you're 22, 23 now, and you're ready. You think you want to enter your own sector, start your own business. In the modern economy and the attention economy, the way things are in, the 2020s, what type of, if you had to start over tomorrow, obviously you don't have this whole thing, what type of business do you think you would start as a young entrepreneur, or what sector or what type of problem do you think you would try to solve like with your product?
Well, and I think it goes along to what your first question was, which is sort of talking about education. And I think that the education of today is much different than it was, 20, 30 years ago. There's a huge room now for educating people on exactly this, on how to get out and find the right path. And you see it where they teach people how to flip houses, or they teach people how to trade stocks, or there's a big room out there for educating people on how to make a living. And I think there's you can get very granular and you can teach them a very there's drop shipping and all these different types of businesses that are out there. But I think what I would focus on more than anything is where things are going, and whether you're getting into products, for instance, like you want to sell specific small products, or you really have to learn how people are buying things and how to get in front of them at a very reasonable price. That's the name of the game. If you look at all of these e-commerce and all these people that find these trends, is they find a product, they see that it's trending, and they realize they can get it in front of people at a very reasonable price. So much of today where we're going is acquisition, leads, attention. Similar to what you're doing with your channel, is that you're getting attention, and then you're trying products that you like, and then you're able to sell them because people trust you, and they should. They're building that connection to you. So the key is that if you're going into a product, you're going to figure out something to sell. You have to figure out how to get it out there affordably, and then you have to figure out how you're going to fix a solution. Like, what's a solution out there what's something that's happening that's a problem that you can fix, and you have a sustainable solution, and you can get it out to people at a price that they can afford and a price that you can actually market it. So that's sort of the name of the game. And I know that's sort of broad, but I think that it's not a one size fits all for everybody. Everybody's going to choose a different path. But, I know people, and crazy it sounds, I know people that are dog walkers that have built a dog walking. I know a guy who built a dog walking business. He makes about $200,000 a year. And so, and
Wow.
You would say, how is that possible? But
you make an app, right? Internet,
He doesn't even have, it's all word of mouth.
Oh, wow.
He mostly deals with celebrities, and he's built this. He's got a crew, and he's hiring people, and people trust him. And, there's a big level of trust there because people getting access to your homes. And so it's sort of a niche thing, but he's making, a significant amount of money just doing one very small thing, and he's solving a problem, right? People are gone all day, or they're traveling, or whatever it is, and they don't want their little puppy staying at home all by itself, and it's got to get walked and fed and all this stuff. So it's a significant problem. So he's built a very great, and he was just starting out himself, just walking dogs. He'd walk a few at a time, and he built it, and it was a guy that loved to be outside and exercise. And then he started to think like, hey, I could scale this, and I can hire people, and it just sort of blossomed from there. So something that's so simple that everybody needs, and that, that sector, that the pet food and pets, it's absolutely massive. There's so many opportunities there. So I think what you have to do is, if you want to be smart about it, you have to look at 22 years old, you have to look at where the trends are for the next 5 to 10 years and pick a sector that you think there's going to be a lot of attention, a lot of money, and see if there's a way that you can solve a problem there and figure out a way to build a business that's profitable. So
in your experience of sales, what are some things you learned maybe about the best ways to sell, or, tactics regarding human nature that aren't necessarily the most common sense to a lot of people, but you kind of picked up along the way of selling to people? Because I think these are skills, obviously, that might not be apparent to people, but are very important.
Well, the number one thing that I've always done when I ever think of sales is the simplest way to look at it is, first of all, it depends on what selling you're doing, but phone sales, within 3 seconds, you have to get their attention. You have to say or grab them in a way. So that's the most important thing. Number two, you have to make sure people respect your time.
And by the way, that's something I always tell my editors when they're like, I've been trying to have editors make clips for YouTube, and a lot of times I'm like, this is way too long, right? It's way too long to get the point across. It has to be, the hook is right in the beginning, and it is true, right? That's how people are. You have to, it's not even a 10-second pitch. It's really like a 3-second pitch. But yeah, continue.
The first 3 seconds on a phone call, if you're selling on the phone, the first 3 seconds are huge. Really just kind of grabbing attention, but constantly, I think there's a few different levels. So it's the first 3 seconds, grabbing their attention, almost like a hook, like a call to action, like what you're doing, I'm sure 10 times a day. Obviously establishing yourself as an authority in the space so that they know that you're an authority in the space. And then also the connection, obviously, is a big part, is just connecting to that person on the other line. But the one thing I always thought about when I was doing in sales is, and I kept a picture of it is that what happens in sales is that you're trying to go a very straight path. And what ends up happening is you can never go on a straight path to the sale, right? If you go on a straight path, people will hang up you. You're going to have to go in different directions in the sale. You're going to get brought. But what ends up happening is you always want to come back to the line. You always want to come back to the line at some point. Even if if you know an average call is going to be 15, 20, or 30 minutes, whatever it is, you have to continue to bring up what you're doing on that phone call. And yes, you're talking to people. Sometimes tangents will happen. You'll go over here, but you always have to get back to the line. That's the thing that I always try to remind people that I'm working with on sales, is that you will go on tangents, but you will come back to the line eventually at some point. And then I think, one thing to always understand is that, in terms of what you're selling, there's obviously products you sell right away. But the majority of products you're selling that are a higher dollar value, where a lot of the big money is made, you're typically not going to close on that first phone call. And so you need to remind yourself that you're planting seeds for the future through that entire phone call, because you never know when that person's going to come back. You never know when that person, and you have to plant those seeds early and do it in a way that's effective. And if you do that and you stay on the path, you will have a lot of success in selling, whatever product you want to sell.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's the same thing really with like YouTube ad reads, right? A lot of times one ad, sometimes people hit you up, they just want to do one ad read, and sometimes people will click on it, but a lot of times they're just like whatever. But when they hear the name over and over again, that kind of pattern recognition, and yeah, it does absolutely plant the seeds. Okay, so final step of this process here, I think we've done this in a pretty good straight line here. Now say, okay, you started the business, it's doing well for itself, now you have some income, your money is coming in. What's your advice? Let's say, I don't know, reaching late 20s, early 30s. Where do you invest? How do you build and maintain and sustain and multiply your wealth kind of on that front?
Yeah, well, the first thing it's important in today's day and age, before you start investing the money and out of the business, is you have to always invest in the business and the people within the business. It's extremely important that, and most businesses are this way, is that you're going to have people that are working for you, that are involved in the business. You always have to invest back into them, because the more you create a culture of people that want to be there, that you're involved with them in their life, you care about them. It's really important to build those connections in the business. That's the number one thing. A lot of young business owners, they think people are sort of interchangeable in a business, and it's when you get quality people that care about you and your company, those people are not interchangeable.
Yeah.
You have to do whatever you can to keep them with you and to build that culture. And you need to do it every day. You need to do it in any capacity you have. It's the most important thing that you can do, is build that culture within the business, because it resonates. It resonates with your employees. It resonates with your clients. People know it. People that work with NobleGold, they know that we've built a culture of family. They like working with us. They can tell that. And a lot of people are family. I mean, my father works for us. He's almost 80 years old. A lot of people are cousins, brothers. I mean, we are family. We've built a family culture. And that is the most important thing, is once you've gotten past that, you're wearing 10 hats as a business owner and you're hiring people, you have to create that culture that you're important and they're important, and that you're building that culture for the future. So that's the first thing. Mm-hmm. In terms of investing, I believe when you're building a business and you're looking the long term, you should invest the exact same way. I don't think you should look for get rich quick. And I know that in today's day and age, it's hard. You see things out there that seem too good to be true. And even in the business world, there's a lot of these people that say, oh, if you start up within a year, you're going to make X. Well, you may make 150,000 on YouTube within a year, but guess what? You get demonetized, which a lot of people do, and stuff happens. That 150,000 could go down to 10,000. So what you have to do is you have to really be cautious when you're investing, because you may need that money later on to help fuel the business. So obviously, NobleGold Investments, we believe in gold and silver. It's safe, it's liquid, which is great. A lot of thing about investments today is that people think certain investments are great, and they are. But for instance, let's say you bought real estate 2 years ago, right? And let's say you need that money, your business drops, and you need that money now to fund your business. Yeah. Well, guess what? You're selling that house or that property at a discount, 20, 30%. Mm-hmm. So, and it's not easy to sell either. Real estate, you can't just sell it in a second. So I think it's important that as you're building, you want to have assets that are liquid. Gold is a great option. Silver is a great option. You want to have some money. Maybe you have a little money in the bond market. The bond market's making, you can make 4% right now. There's some places you can make that tax free. So I think early in your career, you want to have it. And then obviously I'd put some money away in the stock market and just set it and forget it. Just put some money there over time. It will do great. You're not going to retire overnight, but you're going to hit 7 to 10% returns over, 20, 30 years. So I think you want to be diversified in those few ways, but you want to have some liquidity in the event that you need to kind of fund back in the business, something happens, because the first 3 to 5 years in a business, you just never know what's going to happen. You may need some capital to infuse that business. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think it was a great conversation. It was a great interview, Collin. Thank you for coming on as usual, and thanks for having me. I think it was a great conversation. Actually, very useful for people, especially a lot of viewers.
Well, hopefully they'll leave some comments and if anybody has questions, obviously send them to Vince. I'm happy to jump on. Next time we do this, if you want to jump on, I can answer questions from the audience and people just kind of get into more, because I'm sure people are going to go, wait a minute, talk or they want to get a little bit more specific. So I'm happy to do that. And if anybody's looking to learn about gold and silver from us, you can put gold and silver in your IRA. A lot of people don't know that. It's real silver. It's real gold. It's not a fund, not a leverage account. If that's something that's interesting to you, check out our website at noblegoldinvestments.com. Make sure you mention that you heard us on Vince's show. And also, if you want, you can give us a call at 877-646-5347.
All right. Collin Plume, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on.